Okay, so now that we have our register and login functionality complete, let's go ahead and actually style these two pages. So what we're gonna do here is we will go into that theme that we have downloaded and we're simply gonna implement a pre-built template. So we'll go into that theme, we'll just have to modify the fields, make sure all the correct classes and IDs are applied, and then our page will look much better. So let's go ahead and go into that resources folder. So open up resources and go into dev search theme. And let's just go ahead and take a look at login.html first. So here we have a form. If we take a look at the form, we just have two input fields and some styling around it. So it's actually not that different from what we currently have. We have our two fields, except for here we don't have the proper classes and IDs wrapped around all that content. So we just want to apply what we have here. So we'll just have to modify this form here. So we also have our sign up page, so the register page. So same thing, we just have some styling here with a background, some icons, and we're just gonna go ahead and apply this too. So in our template here, we actually have both forms in the same template rendered out with that condition. So let's go ahead and actually start applying these. So the first thing I wanna do is I just wanna copy sign up and login. So I'll select both of those holding control, and then we'll just do control C to copy those. And I'm gonna paste those into my Django project inside of the root directories templates folder. So we're just gonna need to extract some HTML here. So I'll paste those in, and now I can open up my text editor here, and let's first go into users, let's go into template, and let's go into login_register. So this is what we currently have. Let's look at the landscape. So if the page is register, we'll output the register form. So that's all right here. And then we just have an else statement that says if we're not on the register page, which means this is a login page, we simply have this form here to actually log in. So let's start with the login form. So we'll go ahead and open that up. So we'll go into our root directories templates folder, and let's open up login.html. So I'll just bring that in here. So in this page, let's actually just go ahead and get rid of the head right here. So we don't need this. We'll just clean that up so it's not distracting us. And what we're gonna do is take everything from the opening body tag, so just underneath it, all the way to the closing body tag. And let's just dissect what we have here. So here we have a wrapper for the entire page. Then we have a card, so another div here, and this card right here wraps the entire form. So that is, if I go into the login page, that's this card right here. So we have a card that wraps all that. And then within the card, we have a header. So we just have our title, so with some kind of hello message. So that's an entire div right here. So we just wrap that information there. And if I go back to the template, that is this section right here. So underneath this section, we also have a form. So let's take a look at that. So down here, we have a form. So here we go. The form starts right here and it closes right here. So let's go ahead and take this entire wrapper and we'll paste this in, and we're just going to modify that form a bit. So let's go in here and let's take the auth div, or the div with the class of auth, and let's go all the way down to just above the closing body tag. So let's copy this and let's go into login register HTML. So in the else statement right here, let's go ahead and just paste that entire wrapper in here. So I'm just going to do control V to paste that in because I copied it. And I pasted that underneath the original form. So what we want to do here is we're going to leave that card alone here. So that header section, we won't change anything here. We just want to Djangofy this form here, or Djangofy, however you want to say that. We basically want to make sure that we are taking this action and the method and we're applying it to our template here. So down here inside of that template we installed, we see that action sends us nowhere because it's just a template. We'll get rid of that. We'll leave the class here, but let's paste in the contents from the other form. So the action is going to send the user to the login page, and we have the method. So we're just changing those values. Now the next thing we need from this form is simply just to ensure that we have our two input fields of a username and password. So the name value should be username. Make sure it's spelled the same exact way as the form below. So we have a name and username. And here we have simple input fields. Now down below, to actually style those, we have our input field right here wrapped in a div. So the actual input field is right here. We can see that there's a class on it, there's an ID, And as long as, oh, that's the password. Let's go to the username. Let's go to this one first. And at this point, we should say username, and that's not going to be an email. So we have a wrapper around our input field. We have a label here that says username. That's good. We want that. And we want to make sure that we have this input field with a name of class. Now down below here, we have our password. So it's a wrapper around that field. We have a label that says password, and the name is password. So that's the main thing we have to ensure here. So really, these two forms are exactly the same. This one just has some contents in it with some styling. So now we actually have a copy. If I scroll up here, so right here, we actually have a copy of this form. So we have the two input fields. So we just want to take this CSRF token. So we want to make sure this token is applied to this form. So let's paste that just underneath the opening form tag. We want to pass in the CSRF token. And we also want to make sure that when we are pointing to that register page, we just want to make sure we take this URL here. So we also have that in our template. So down here, we have a link to sign up. We want to change that from signup.html, and we just want to send the user to the actual page that we have. So that is all we need to do at this point. So what I can actually do now that we paste it in the template, is get rid of this form because we have a copy of this form below. So that's it. If I save this, let's go ahead and take a look at the form and make sure it works. So if I go back to the page here, let's just do a Control-Shift-R, do a hard refresh, and here we go. We have our form. So I just want to make sure it's working before we add in the background and the icon. So let's go ahead and add in your credentials to a user, hit login, and everything is working. So we just submitted the username and password to the backend. So everything is working correctly. So to modify that icon, let's actually go back into our resources folder. So this is my Django project. I'll actually open it up again. So let's start with resources, and let's go into dev search theme, and let's go into images, and let's grab this icon SVG. So if we look at the template, it requires icon.svg. So we want to add that into our Django static files. So let's open up dev search on the right here, and let's go into static. And then we'll go into images and let's paste that in. So now we have icon SVG. Now to actually connect this, I need to make sure that this actually points to my Django static files. So we'll go into my form here or login_register. And let's just go ahead and load in static. So we'll just do load static. And let's go into that image now. So it's in the else statement, and let's just wrap this. So let's use a curly brace and a percent symbol. Then we can say static, and then in single quotes, let's go ahead and wrap this. So we're pointing now to the static folder, and we're going into images. So we're going into images, and then we're getting icon SVG. So here we want to add a single quote there, and then we just want to close this off here. So a curly brace and a percent symbol. So if I refresh this, we should now see that icon here. So there we go, that looks good. And the last thing I want to do is actually add in the background. Now for this, inside of our resources folder, so in that theme, let's also grab the pattern here. So that is the background. Let's copy this and let's go into our Django project, into static, images, and let's paste in that pattern here. So how this pattern is going to be applied is going to be using CSS. So that's how we're actually going to apply it. So let's go ahead and go back into our static folders. So let's just save everything, and you don't need to close that out technically, but let's go into static here and let's go into styles and app.css. So if we look at the wrapper, let's actually go ahead and open up the page too. I shouldn't have closed that. So let's go into login register. I'm going to open that up on the side. So if we look here, we have a wrapper around the entire page with a class of auth. So go into app.css and find this. So find .auth and then the 2 colons and after. So you could just do Control F like that and then do .auth, and that should take you to it. So if you haven't edited this page at all, it's on line 652. So in here, we have a background URL, and that's pointing into images and pattern.jpg. So I think my file structure is correct. So we're going out one folder and we're going into images. So now that we have pattern.jpg in here, I should be able to refresh this and we'll see that as our background. So I just wanted to show you how that was actually connected and applied. Okay, so we now have our login form, and we'll worry about the forgot password in a later video. So let's go into the sign up page now. So let's go into sign up, and we also want to apply a template here. So back in our code now, we can go ahead and go into our root directories templates folder if that's where you pasted it. And let's go into signup.html. So same thing here. We don't need anything in the head tags. Let's go ahead and into the opening body tag. So just underneath it, let's copy all of this. And let's end that just above the closing body tag. So that final div here. Now, register is going to be a little bit different because we are using the user creation form. So let's just paste this just below this right here. So this form. So we have if page is register, then the end if or the closing statement. So let's take this link right here. Let's remove it. And let's paste in what we just got below the register form. So we'll paste that in. And if we take a look at the register form, we have a bunch of fields here manually created, and we don't need these because we are using the user creation form. So we pass that in like that, and that's dynamic. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of these fields here. So the first thing I want to do is actually update that image. So we'll just re-add this. So remember, we have two forms here in the if statement. And then if we go down, we have the else statement. So we're basically just repeating this. So let's go ahead and take that image. Now we probably could have wrote this statement in the actual contents of that card, but for now we're just going to do the entire page. So let's go ahead and just replace that. So that way we have our image here. And let's scroll down to the form. So for these field values, I'm going to leave this original field here. So we'll leave that for now. And let's go ahead and go into that email field and let's get rid of it. So this entire div here. So it starts right here and it closes right here. So we'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of the password field. So this div right here, let's remove that. And then the password confirmation, that closes right here. Let's remove it. And that's it. Then we just have our input button. So before we continue here, let's actually remove this link. So if a user is on our register page, we want to send them to the login page. So we'll just say URL, and then that is going to login. So let's see what we have here first before we start modifying it. So if we go in here, we should have our login form. So we can get rid of the form up here after we modify it. So here is our login form or our register form with one field value, and then we can go to login. So login and sign up. So now what we want to do here is actually customize this form just like we did with the one in our login page. So we'll go in here, and the first thing I want to do is take the method here and the action. Let's copy that, and we'll go down into this form. Let's replace this while leaving that class. Save that. And let's see, what else do we want here? So we want to get that CSRF token, and let's paste that inside of the opening form tag. So we'll paste that in here. Now for the actual form itself, let's just go ahead and take this right here. Let's copy that tag, but let's get rid of all of this right here. So we don't need this anymore. So I'm going to save it, and I still have that form tag copied. And let's just refresh the page. So this is now our register page. And instead of account sign up, let's just do register. So let's change that text here. So if page is register, down here we'll just say register. So register and account. Let's just do that. I like that better. So down in the form values, I've already showed you this before, but what we want to do is go ahead and loop through the form. So I just pasted that in. So that's our form tag. And I guess we didn't need to copy that, so I'll get rid of it. And let's just create a loop here. So we'll just do for field in form, and let's just create an end if. So we want to end that for loop. So we'll just do end if. And that shouldn't have a space there. So in that loop, let's go ahead and let's remove that comment there. Let's go ahead and output the form fields. And remember, we don't want to get rid of this one right here. This is that submit button. So in that loop, on each iteration, what do we want to do here? So I can go ahead and get rid of this input value right here. So I can get rid of all of that. And in a variable, we'll just do field. We'll pass that in, and that's going to output a field, and the styling won't be perfect until we apply some CSS to that later. So we have the field, and then we just want to copy this, and for the actual label, we'll just do field.label. So I showed you this in an earlier video for model forms. So we can just loop through every single field in that form and output it like that. So let's see what we have. So if I go in here, something went wrong here. Oh, I did end if, so that should be end for. So let's go ahead and refresh that again. Okay, so here we go. So we have our field values, but this form does not look as good as our login page. So for our login page, all we had to do is just wrap all these contents inside of that form wrapper and then style that input field by adding a class. So we just add the class of input and that works for us. But that doesn't work for a model form as well because we can't actually access that input value. So for this, what we're gonna do is we'll go into our models and just apply the class that way. So, or our model forms. So we have our forms.py. And if we go ahead and go into our projects app, let's actually take some code from there. So we'll go into forms.py. I'm going to open this up to the side here. So we have our forms.py from our profiles app. So in here, we created this, or we overrid the super method here, and we just looped through every single field and added the class of input. So that is in an older video. If you want to see how we did that, we can check that out, but the code is all going to be here. So let's go ahead and close this out and let's go into forms.py into our user creation form within our users app. So if I go in here, let's make sure we paste it and the indentation is correct. So it should be lined up with class meta. All we need to do is take this value, add this to the super method. So we want to let it know what field we're working with. And we're simply going to loop through every single field in the user creation form. And we're going to add the class of input. So if I save that, because of our theme and because of all of our pre-styled content, if I go to sign up, there we go. So everything looks pretty good now. So it's a little bit cut off because I'm so zoomed in here, but that should be good once you're actually working with it. It should look like this right here. And at this point, I want to add the final touches to this form by adding in some helper text and some errors down here when a user maybe doesn't submit the correct information into their form. So let me show you an example. So let's say we have a user and this user starts submitting their information. So that's an email field. So we need the @ symbol. And this user decides to use a short password here. So let's say their password is dog, so 3 letters. Well, by default, a user creation form requires at least 8 characters. So if the user submits this, they're going to see an error, but it doesn't tell us anything more that's happening here. So we know there's an error, but the user may just think that they're submitting their password in wrong, so they'll keep trying it when they're trying to register, and they won't understand what's going on. So let's say this other user decides to add in the correct amount of characters, but the password doesn't match. So if we submit it, we still don't know what's going on. So we're going to output some helper text and some error fields for this. So let's go into our form here. And in this loop, and the reason why we're not seeing this is because we're outputting our fields this way. So if we just use that form._p, it would have been fine. But because we're looping through it this way, we can't see that. So let's go ahead and in the loop, within the form field div here, just underneath field, let's go ahead and ask a question. So we'll just do if here. So we'll create an if statement, and we're going to say if field dot help underscore text. So if the field has any help text, let's go ahead and output it. So we just want to close off this if statement. So we'll just do end if, and let's just use a small tag here. So we'll just do small, and I can just do field dot help text. So we'll just output the help text. So we'll just do field.help text like that. So if I save this, let's see what we get. So let's make sure this one went correctly. So the help text are these little messages here, and I personally don't like them, so I'll get rid of them in a second, but they're letting me know what's actually going on. So this one says your password can't be too similar to other personal information. So if my username was Dennis, it means that I can't use Dennis for my password. It must contain at least 8 characters, and so on. So we see all this helper text, and this is very convenient. So the next thing I want to do is actually output some errors. So instead of just having helper text, what if we let the user know exactly what went wrong in that submission process? So for this, I'm going to go back into that form, and inside of this loop here, and still inside of the form field div, let's go ahead and create a loop and loop through all the errors and output what we have. So if there are errors, then we will see them. So we'll just do for error in fields dot or field dot errors. Let's go ahead and add in that end for tag. So we'll close out that loop. We'll just do end for, and we just want to output the errors in some kind of paragraph text here. So, or paragraph tag. So we'll just output the error itself. And I want to make that red. So if we have an error, I want that easier to see. So we'll just do color and we'll set that to red so we know something went wrong here. So if I go ahead and try doing this again, so let's create a username. So we'll just do something random, and then for the email, let's just set the username. So we have the name and then the username, and let's just do a short password again. So we'll just say dog. Now down here, we'll do dog, confirm that, and here we go. So we can actually see the errors that we're getting. So in this case, that's not a valid email, and we can see that the password was too short and the password was too common. So what if we change this to email.com? And I think that error happened because we don't have this right here, so the .com. So if I submit that again, let's just do another password. So here we'll do dog, and here we will do cat. So cat, 2 3-letter passwords. So now the email in theory is valid, even though that's not a real email, but at least it matches here, or it does what it needs to do as far as how it ends. For the password, we can see the password fields do not match. So now we can actually see the exact error. So what I'm going to do here, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to uncomment, or I'm going to comment out these because I think they make my form look ugly, and I will just leave the errors here. So I think that's going to be enough for the users, but that's up to you. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that's still in the source code. So we'll just comment that out. And from now on, we can see all the errors. So if I refresh that, much better. So the last thing I want to do in this video is work on our alert messages. So if we register here and then we log out, we see this alert message, but it looks really bad. It's not formatted. We basically just use what Django gives us, and I just don't like the way it looks. So we want to actually style this. So to style this, go ahead and open up your resources folder and open up your theme here. And inside of that theme, open up the folder called UI Kit. Now inside of the folder called UI Kit, open up index.html here. So this is the documentation for the custom built UI kit, and go ahead and scroll down to the section where we have our alert messages. So this is what we want our alert messages to look like here. So if we have a standard message, we want that to be blue. If we have a message that's like a user successfully registered, we want that to be green. And then anything that's an error, we typically want that to be red. So here is the styling that we need to apply. We need to wrap a simple div around our content here, add the class of alert, and then just kind of follow this method here. So this is what we'll do here. We're just going to follow this practice. So we already have this in our code. Remember, we installed the UI kit originally into our Django code, into our static files. So that's all already right here. So we don't have to add anything new. So what we'll do here is we'll go into the section where we added our alert messages, which was in main.html. So in here, we just copied and pasted what the Django documentation told us. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and recreate all of this. So right now we have a simple UL tag here, and then we just go into all the messages. So for message and messages, and we output the content. So as we output each message, I want to change out how this is going to look here. So let's go ahead and just rewrite this, and then I'll just comment this out later. So first we'll check if we have any messages. So we'll say if messages, then let's just add in the end if. So let's close that out here. So first we want to know if we have any. So end if. Now we want to loop through all the messages. So I'll just copy that right here, and we're just going to be looping through it. I'll take that end for and paste that in here. So if, and then our for loop. Okay, so what does the UI kit tell us to do here? So we just want to create this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and type this out. So we create a div and then a paragraph tag and a button. So let's see. As we're outputting each message, we want that div, and this div at this point just gives us the class, or just needs the class of alert. And that's going to give us that blue alert by default. Then we need a paragraph right here. And in the paragraph tag, we're just going to output the actual message. So we'll just say message here. So that's going to tell us what we're trying to tell the user. And then for that paragraph tag, we need the class of alert underscore message. Now we also need a button tag. So we'll just create a button. And in the button, let's just add in an X, and that's gonna tell us to close the button here, or close that the alert message. So in here, we'll just do class, and this has to have the class of alert underscore underscore close. So double underscores for this one and this one. So that should give us our message here. So let's go ahead and test this. So if I save this and then comment this out, let's see what happens. So if I try to go ahead and test this, let's close these two links out. Let's go ahead and log in, and let's try to log out here, or log in with the incorrect information. So I just added some random password. Okay, so there we go. So now we see an alert message, and this close right here will not work. So we're gonna fix this in a second. So the problem with this alert message is that it's currently blue, and we want this to be an error. So we want it to actually show up as red. So if we look at the documentation, in order to create the red message, that's the last one, we need to add in an alert -- error. So to actually make this work, what we're gonna do is add in that class. So we just need to add that class. We'll just do alert -- and then we have something called message tags here. So we'll just add it and I'll explain. So let's just go ahead and do message.tags. So I'm gonna save that. And remember when we created these messages, so inside of our views here in that login message, we specify the tag that we're going to use. So that's the type of message. So in this case, the tag name will actually be error, and that matches perfectly with the class that we need. So this class right here will be alert -- and then our tag, which in this case, it's going to output the tag from the backend. So we have an error. So in this case, if a user does not exist, we want that to be an error. And if we scroll down to log out, we have the messages. In this case, that's not an error, so we want it to be blue, so we'll just do info. So the tag will be info. So that is going to be good right there. It's not going to conflict with the colors. So we basically just added that in, and that's the new class here. So that's going to be dynamic. So let's go ahead and test this. And now if I try to do this again, so we'll refresh this. Let's go ahead and try to type in a bad password. Let's hit login. And there we go. So the username and password is incorrect. What if we do log in with the correct information? So now the password will be correct, and then we log out. This message is going to be blue, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So we can customize these tags by simply outputting this in the view and specifying this. So that's all in the Django documentation. There's different tag types, and that changes the color of the message and the message type. Now, to actually close this, the reason why this isn't working is because we have not configured our UIKit's JavaScript yet. So inside of our static folder, let's go ahead and close out our views. Inside of our static folder, if we go into UIKit, we have a file called app.js. So in app.js, we basically have a query selector that gets the alert, and then it closes that alert. So we just do display none, and that alert is now hidden. So all we need to do is go into main.html, and at the bottom of the page, because this is where you typically would put JavaScript, let's add in a script link or a script tag, and we need to specify the source. So we'll just go into source, and this source is going to be going into the static folder. So we'll use the static tag, we'll do static, and then how we did our CSS earlier, where we linked up to our UIKit, we did UIKit styles, and then our CSS. For our JavaScript, we're going to go into static, and then we're going into UIKit, and then app.js. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do static, or not static because we already have that. So we'll do UIKit, and then /app.js. So if I save this, now that JavaScript should work. So if I refresh it, let's try that again. Let's log in. Log out. I can close the alert message if I have a bad alert. There we go, and the alert message is finally showing up. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we are going to start building out our user account. So once a user registers, they'll be redirected to their account so they can upload their profile information, modify that, and take care of everything that they need.